All right, welcome everybody. Another great town hall event as we continue our voice project. Um, we got a really good panel today. We're going to talk about, last week we talked about police accountability and what police accountability looks like. And now we'll look at the community and how, as a community and as a group of citizens, we can help um, improve our community, and how do we recognize bias, prejudice, and racism, and how does that affect decisions. This will be a little bit different town hall than what we've done.
Looks like John froze.
You call back in.
Done in the past. Please, if you haven't already, could you please mute yourself?
With this hand, you can eat just as before, and the other one should work just as a regular hand, though with more stiff fingers.
Everybody can hear
So
me.
I'd say,
Please hit mute. If you're on the panel, then you can. But I'll manually mute you just to keep the background noise to a minimum. I would appreciate it if everybody.
John, can you mute me? Because I can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, hang on.
If you can mute me, that's cool.
I can. Hang on one second.
Thank you.
I can mute people. I can't unmute people. I can kick people out too, but we don't want to do that because that would be bad. So anyway, we're going to do a little bit different style today because we're going to look inward at each other and ourselves and how we can recognize our own bias, prejudice, and how that affects decisions we make. We have a nice little interactive deal that we're going to do here with one of our panelists here in a second. So we're going to follow up in our Walk a Mile in Someone's Shoes series, and how do we bridge the gap with veterans to improve communities every day. Just keep in mind, this is a respectful, positive dialogue. We're looking to be solution oriented, and we're looking at, what is your real experience, and what's a real experience to you is real, even if that's not someone else's experience. So some of what you hear, you may not agree with. It may make you angry. It may shock you, but also keep in mind, we're here to listen, because God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we use proportionally. We are not political, and so we're just trying to listen, learn, provide positive solutions, find common ground and understanding of our differences. And while we don't need to agree on everything, we need to have a fundamental respect for one another on a basic human level. And remember that in our country, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution hold truths to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Even if you disagree, your unalienable rights do not supersede mine. We're here to look forward, elevating the discussion, educating ourselves, and evolving, trying to find hope and purpose together to improve and strengthen our community. And with that, all audience members, please remain on mute unless called upon. All speakers, please try to keep your remarks to 1 minute or so we can keep the dialogue flowing. All questions, please type into the chat box. If you have any comments or anything, the chat box is there. We're going to use that extensively today. We ask that no political statements. We're trying to keep this non-denominational, nonpartisan. This is a positive, respectful dialogue, and we're really looking to do how we can be more kind and civil, especially to those we don't know or don't necessarily agree with. And if you, for some reason, can't follow the rules, you will be removed. And with that, I am pleased to welcome our first panelist. Please welcome Diane Burford. She is the CEO of Rise to Win, and they're one of the big partners for the Life Aid Voice Project. We're partnering with Diane and her group for our big event in November, and I thought it would be great to have her kick off the call today and talk about the goals of Rise to Win. So Diane, with that, I'll let you introduce yourself, and away we go.
Hey, good afternoon or evening, everyone. For those of us on the East Coast, it's evening. I also want to take a minute to introduce Erin Pellegrino, who's on the RISE team. I know Erin is here somewhere.
Hi.
Erin has actually been at RISE longer than me. She's been here basically since RISE's inception. And so I just wanted to introduce her and invite her as I talk to you guys about RISE to help me with this. I found out about the Voice Project maybe it could possibly have been as much as a month ago through our board co-chair, Paul Tagliabue, who some of you may know, the former commissioner of the NFL. And he's just been an amazing leader on our board, along with our other co-chair, Stephen Ross, who owns the Miami Dolphins franchise. And we exist to help the sports community have these difficult conversations and figure out how they can take a part in making a stronger, more united, country. To put it in a fancy way, Erin heads the communications team. Our mission is to educate and empower the entire sports community on issues of racism, to combat racism, to promote social justice, and to improve race relations. And so we do that through a number of programs, some with youth, some with law enforcement, some bringing very diverse youth together in the collegiate space and the professional space with coaches. We're a lot of places. We believe, like so many of the groups that I've heard on this call, that this really starts with being introspective, learning yourself, and then figuring out how that impacts society and how we impact one another. And so I will stop there. Erin, I don't know if you want to add more. And as usual, I just look forward to it. John, what you have planned for the night.
Yeah, just excited to be part of the team and learn more today. I think there's a
Excellent.
lot of great opportunities
Thank you guys
for
so
us
much
to work
for
together
being
and
a part of
amplify
it.
this
We
work.
really appreciate it. Also, we have with us today, please welcome Christopher Harris. He is a community activist based in Washington, D.C., and is a leading voice in the community and how to recognize and react to bias, prejudice, and racism. Chris, take it away.
Hey, John, thanks for inviting me, everyone. And as you said, my name is Christopher Harris. I am the executive director of unhyphenatedamerica.org. And we're here to promote the idea that America, quite simply, America is best when it's unhyphenated. So I don't refer to myself as an African American, even though you can tell I have a permanent tan. We tend to believe that those are things that are used generally to divide us, even though the diversity is one of the things that we know God created. He created us all equal, as John was saying. We all have equal value. So using things like ethnic identity are things that are usually just linchpins that people use to keep us all divided, especially because it's one of the most superficial aspects of our humanity. So that's one of the things we do is we fight against identity politics. And I thank you all for being here. And I thank John for having this forum. And hopefully we can have more people who are
Excellent.
joining
Thank
in
you,
to have
Chris.
conversations instead of just yelling at each
Also, we
other
have with us
or
today
flat out ignoring each other.
a veteran. He's one of the guys that really helped inspire me to do this project. Hopefully he's still here. I want to welcome Overton Nash. I've been working with Overton for a number of years, and just a really thoughtful guy. We have great conversations, especially on Sunday afternoon, and he's been really helpful to me in many ways, and hopefully I've been helpful to him as well. The best thing about Overton and I is we don't always agree on everything, but we're able to have the type of discussions that we're hoping to have across this country. So welcome, Overton.
Hey, thank you, John. I'm here. I hope everybody can hear me. I just came in off a bike ride, so forgive me. I'm just kind of like winding down. But I really appreciate you inviting me to Life Aid to come and have these discussions and to get perspective from other people. Like me and John, we were having a conversation, and we were talking about the Life 8 Forum and how it's breaking down a lot of walls and barriers. And what I was trying to relay to John was that what I see happening with Life 8 in agreement with him is that a lot of people are so disconnected from each other. You know, you get 100 people in the room and everybody's down on their cell phone, everybody's in their own world. Everybody's just thinking about themselves. And, you know, when it's all over, there's no connectivity to anyone else outside. So if you're not connected, you're not thoughtful. And I believe this forum with Life Aid just connects everybody like a spider web, and it allows us all to be in unison. So, you know, if you know anything about how the spider webs work, if there's a vibration in any one part, it's all over the web, and everybody gets to feel it. And I think that's what's, you know, great about this forum. So
you contribute just by your presence,
me,
Overton.
and,
Don't worry about
again,
it, buddy.
I'm here and hoping I can contribute. Thanks, John.
Our next panelist is not yet joining us, so we're going to skip. And I'm going to introduce Boyd Melson. Boyd is usually my co-host on the town halls, and he handles all the chat questions. And he is a graduate of West Point and is also a pretty good fighter, I hear. I don't know what you think, Mike McAtee, and what you hear about Boyd and his fighting ability, but is he a better lover than a fighter? Something like that? I'm not sure. But please welcome Boyd Melson.
I'm doomed in both. I'm doomed in both. Hi guys, Boyd Melton here, and thank you. I'm here helping. I help run the I'm National Director of Programs for Life Aid Voice, and John's one of his right-hand people, human beings, and extremely passionate about this. So thank you guys. I'm a retired professional boxer.
So we're going to just kind of dive in while we're waiting for Diego to join us. We have a very special guest today, and I got introduced to this gentleman by Michael Haynes. And I don't know, Mike, if you want to introduce David or say a few things about David first. So I'll throw it over to Mike Haynes. Mike Haynes is one of our athlete ambassadors, Super Bowl champion with the LA Raiders, and voted one of the top 100 NFL players for the 100th anniversary of the NFL.
Well, thank you, John. Well, I first met David Versaw through George Allen Jr. As you guys living on the East Coast probably heard of the great Washington Redskins, the Redskins.
Cowboys, Cowboys. Come on now.
I'm not sure all of us would call them great, Mike. Some of us are Giants fans, but continue.
Good call. I'm with you on that. You know, his son, George Allen's son, George Allen Jr., actually came to New York, and he had some ideas of how they could actually help the NFL, and it was through the company called Will Interactive, and traveling with him that day was David Versaw, the person who is here today, who oversees a lot of the programs and a lot of the work that goes on at Will Interactive. They've done work with the military, the police, with the sports. At the time, I was overseeing programs in the NFL for players, and we used several interactive videos that David and his team put together that allowed the viewer to pick different solutions, and the video would continue on based on that solution. So you get to see it. Did I make a good decision, or did I not make a good decision? And you get a chance to go back on the video if you find out at the end of this that you didn't, and start to make some different answers. And then you get to see exactly how in life we always have more than one decision to make or alternative. And so I've gotten to know David now, gosh, it's been several years, and they have done a lot of work. And I'm not sure exactly where he's going to focus his attention on today. But I'd just like to introduce him. He's a great guy. His whole company really is the founder of the company as well. David?
Thanks, Mike. Wow, I couldn't have made the introduction any better. Thanks, buddy. It's good to see you. It's good to see you too. It's been a little while. It's a pleasure to meet everybody and to become a part of this with John and everybody else here. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be, we pulled out a program, and I'm going to be showing it to you, and it's, it allows you to assume the role of characters in an interactive movie, and you get to make decisions, and based on the decisions you make, the movie branches off different directions, and you get to see the consequences of your decisions. Will Interactive has been around for about 25 years. We're a very socially active company. We tend to work with leading organizations with that are trying to tackle very difficult issues. Like the NFL, we work with the NFL about certain difficult issues that they were dealing with a while ago. We help the Army with suicide prevention. We do a lot of work. There's a lot of military and veterans in here. We do a lot of veteran work with the VA and so forth. But the program that I'm going to show you today is a program that we did for law enforcement, and we did it with the Department of Justice and the COPS office. And this is a program called Changing Perceptions, and it is based on understanding, unconscious bias and implicit bias and how it affects everybody. And you get to assume the role of either law enforcement officers or community members in interactive scenarios and see how the decisions play out. So John is going to try to make this kind of interactive through the chat area. One thing I'm going to ask everybody to do, please, is, and maybe John can help with this.
Yeah.
Since we have probably limited bandwidth, and I'm showing an interactive
one of the things I'm going to ask everybody is,
if everybody can turn off their cameras,
and we get to the part
that would be very helpful.
Interactive. I would like very much if everyone can write in on the chat. You'll have options to make decisions, and based on the options, I would like to have everybody type in the option that they want to choose or that they think is the right option. And then as we go through the scenarios, we'll play it out so that way everyone can see how their internal bias affects the outcome of the scenario. Did I say that right, David? Yeah, I can mute people.
Yeah, that sounds great, John. And if there's if you can help other folks who are having difficulty with turning off their cameras, that would be great. So
yeah.
All right. Well, can everybody see Changing Perceptions?
Yes.
All right. Yes. What we're going to do, this has quite a few different scenarios and modules and so forth. This program is in use by a lot of different law enforcement agencies around the country. NYPD uses this. There's some other ones as well. I'm going to jump right into a scenario here at the end. It just pretty much it's self-explanatory. It kind of tells you how, you just kind of go along with it. And this is kind of cutting in halfway through this second module, but you'll be able to pick up on it pretty quickly.
Your psychology experiment is interrupted when...
George 77.
George 77, go ahead.
George 77, caller reporting a suspicious vehicle at 1245 Lee Road and parking lot in front of the supermarket. Vehicle is a maroon sedan. Passengers are 2 black males, 20s. RP is on site.
Copy.
This is also you. It's your first day off in a while, and you're finally getting a chance to play some pickup with your friends. You don't have enough to run threes, but your boys Dan and Steve will do the trick today.
You hungry that horn for, bro? I mean, man, we're talking about me being late. You got a narrow window of time I need to hit or something? Man, you're early.
Early. I still got to pick up Steve when he gets off work, too.
He said work up at the supermarket?
Yeah. I just hope he comes out wearing that nice little Asian pants. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, your girl still works there, too, right?
Ain't my girl no more.
What?
You poor thing, man. What happened? You heard it here first. Out my mouth. This is the last time I mess with this Spanish chick. Yelling at me for no reason. It's way too tiring. That's Salopa, brother. Can't deal with that crazy no more.
Oh, man, I can't even handle you.
How long till it gets off?
I don't know. A few minutes, maybe. What's going on with you?
Not much, man. Ready to school y'all on this court. Hope y'all can't see me.
So you arrive on the scene and see the vehicle with 2 black male occupants. You're not sure where the RP is yet, but you decide to take in the scene for a second. You park so they can see you.
Hang on a second. You see that?
Yeah.
That's not about us, is it? She looking at us?
Doesn't matter, man. You know the drill.
I don't think I do know the drill.
You doing anything wrong?
No.
All right, man. Don't worry about it. Keep it that way.
Wow, really? A couple black men sit in the car for 5 minutes, and we on our way to get them.
Oh, look, here they come with y'all asking now because you are deep in some drama, boy.
How much you want to bet? She gonna think I'm smoking weed.
All right, from this point on, you get to start making decisions as both 2 guys in the car and also the law enforcement officer. So
you can type in free country.
What do you guys want to do? If you
luck.
put it into the chat box there, John's going to kind of calculate them all together. Should we say this is free country? I'm going to turn up the music, or don't press your luck.
I'm going to turn up the music just to be different.
Lots of don't press your lucks. All right, we're gonna kick forward with don't press your luck. Nobody wants to try anything out here.
What are you doing, man? Just trying to prove, dog. Prove? I'm trying to win a bet.
Can't tell what they're smoking or what they're up to, really. What do you want to do?
All right, as a police officer, what do you want to do? You want to calmly approach the vehicle, or hang tight until you have something to go on? Calmly approach or hang tight.
Exactly. Good job.
Lots of hang tights coming in. One thing we're going to do is we'll be able to go back and try different decisions and see how they work out.
So you decide to wait it out. Maybe you have something more to go on in a minute. But for now, all you have is ambiguous information and a 911 call. You have to answer this call eventually. But for now, you're gathering info.
All right. Good job. That was a lot about profiling by proxy. There's a lot of good information in all these programs as well.
Time to answer the call. Nothing seems suspicious here, so closing the call is your duty. Let's have a chat.
Pay up. Pay up. Oh, great. You can't even be mad. I didn't do anything. We're definitely going to get this on video, though.
Please type in your response.
I see you, officer. You see this every day. You got to deal with it.
All right, as a police officer, you want to be assertive or be diplomatic? Everybody is such a good law enforcement officer. All be diplomatic. All right.
Oh, boy, here we go.
How you guys doing today?
Fine, officer. Yeah, all good. Except for there being two black dudes out here, right? Bad boys, bad boys.
What are you up to?
All right. You want to stay calm and cooperate or defend yourselves? Lots of stay calms.
We're just picking up our friend.
Where's your friend?
He works in the grocery store right over there. We were just going to go play some ball, and that's it. Look, here's the basketball. Here's your evidence locker. Right here, folks. Did we do something wrong?
You're talking about while you're here, or it doesn't matter? You need to take charge. All right, talk to them.
Listen, I understand that you're frustrated. I would be too. I'm just responding to a 911 call about a suspicious vehicle.
Suspicious vehicle. You hear that? Suspicious vehicle.
Like I said, I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
She being honest with you, or she step on your right? Yeah. All right, a lot of people.
Look, here's my card, okay? My badge number's right here. Feel free to file a complaint.
Hey, what's up, guys?
This is your friend?
Yeah. Just a casual shakedown, Steve. Nothing to see here. Is there some kind of problem?
I was responding to a call about a suspicious vehicle, but no, there's no problem.
A suspicious vehicle.
Again, I'm sorry for any inconvenience and for interrupting your afternoon. Have a good one, guys.
Okay. Hell was that about?
I don't know. It's probably some skittish white lady who doesn't like seeing a couple of handsome brothers in a supermarket parking lot.
Your mom, maybe? If it was my mom, you'd already be in jail.
All right, so we had a really good, successful encounter there because everybody did the right thing. But I tell you what, I'm going to skip forward and we're going to go a different path. All right, everybody wanted to do, skip
Your
here.
psychology experiment.
All right, now we're gonna go a little bit different direction to see what happens here. If they're in the car, and we're gonna turn up the music.
Put your bug face on. Oh, what?
We've got a couple of hard dudes here. Smoke, loud music. What do you want to do?
All right, instead of being a little calm, we're gonna approach this vehicle immediately.
Time to answer the call. These guys seem like they're provoking. They're not being hostile yet, but it's time to have a chat.
You happy now, man? She's getting out.
Oh, who wins the bet?
You are seriously stupid.
Hold up. I'm going to get this on video.
What?
Yeah.
I see you, officer. You see this every day. You got to deal with it.
All right, and we're going to be a surrogate and see what happens here.
That's right.
She looks like she's about to whip a gun out. I think you own something.
Yeah, see how it plays out.
What are we up to?
And we're master aggressor. Is that what you want to do, John? Yeah, all right.
What are you up to, Senorita?
I wasn't talking to you, sir.
Well, you should be. I got plenty to say.
What, you making a movie back there?
Yeah. It's the nightmare sequence. Action.
Your buddy's a little excited, huh?
Look, officer, we just waiting for our friend. Did we do something wrong or what? Other than being black in the parking lot?
All right, we'll do the worst scenario here.
Look, this is not a game, okay? You two aren't the only members of the public that I need to serve. So if I came over here, be pretty sure it's for a reason, okay? And my name isn't Senorita, sir. It's Officer Erica Ramos.
Look, officer,
Look, guys, just work with me, okay? There isn't a problem, so let's not create one.
All right, now that's a different ending. There's quite a few different endings between good and bad. Let's see if there's anything beyond this.
What's this?
Sir, I'm gonna need you to take a step back, okay?
What, these guys in my ride? What's going on here?
Yo, this cop has some sort of problem with us just sitting here. See, officer, we got a white print. We okay now?
Be serious. Is this what you get paid for?
We really are just picking up our friend.
Rich, you don't have to explain yourself.
Sir,
I
I'm
can't
gonna need
believe
you to
this.
stay inside the vehicle right now.
We free to go now, or is there anything else?
George 77, routine backup, please.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Man, come on. Oh, no, it's cool, man. Keep recording. This kind of thing happens too often.
I got one too, guys, okay? I am responding to a 911 call, and you are dangerously close to obstructing my duty.
A 911 call.
Can you believe it's garbage?
All right, so that's an example of the type of programs we do for law enforcement. But again, we work with veterans. We work with a bunch of other areas to try to bring groups together, allow people to step in the shoes of somebody else and make different decisions.
Thank you, David.
And see the consequences of those decisions from a different direction.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody has questions, if you could please type your questions into the chat, then Boyd will sort through those.
And does anybody have any questions?
Yes,
or
that's
anything
why
like
I invited you
about what we
to be on this call today. So one of the questions I have for the panel, I'm going to start with Overton, because Overton and I chat a lot. We talk about police encounters and stuff that you've had experience with that I'll never understand. Talk a little bit about how you as a community member and experiences that you've had with police in Oakland and how that video can help community members, not just the police, but community members improve how they handle these kind of situations. We're talking about accountability here.
All right, John. I guess from the examples that I saw, I would say that it never happens that way. I've been approached by the police many times over, and I've never been approached by one female police officer, especially if there's more than two black men. It never happens. Most of the time, the cars, it's more than one car, and they come really close, like surrounding you in a real aggressive manner. It's maybe only once or twice in my life it's ever been that calm and relaxed like we did in the first scenario. So I think that because of that, it doesn't really reflect like the situations and the tensions that happen and how people are some just are fearful and don't want to have an encounter. Like, for instance, me personally, if I was sitting in a car and there was another officer parked as far away as she was looking at me in the vehicle, I'm probably going to leave. I don't want to be around and have an altercation. I don't want nothing to even happen. It's not that I would be fleeing. It's not that I would be,
So talk
that I did
about how
something
you would
wrong.
see the
I just
scenario
don't want to
play
be
out
around it.
in,
So I would
in
just
your
leave.
experience. Because that's what we want to try to
So
get
the
to, is how you take what the
scenarios, I think,
scenario
don't
is,
really
and now
reflect
let's relate it to
how
each other
these situations
as
normally take
citizens.
place in inner cities. Okay. Well, the officer approach was very respectful. I don't really see people getting upset or acting crazy, but some, young people and things like that in the community, and when people are on tension, they act that way. But for the most part, if an officer is being respectful, just walking over to you, asking you something, I wouldn't perceive that something is wrong. Let me give you an example. One day I'm riding my bike in Stockton, California. I'm riding my bike to school. I was attending Delta College. So I'm on my way to school, and there's a cop who comes behind me, and he pulls me over. And the first thing he asked me, he says, excuse me, he said, we see that you're going here. Is there a reason why you were moving in a hurry? So I'm on a bicycle. I said, no, sir. He said, do you have any ID on you? So I said, yes, sir. I give him my ID. He says, are you on probation or parole? That's normally the first question you get asked, at least me, as a black male. Are you on probation or parole? Once they get your ID, that's the first thing they're going to ask you. And then they start searching around, looking as if, let me find something to incriminate this person. You start searching and looking around and trying to find things. And then they start questioning you, asking you questions to see if they can catch you up in some way as if you were breaking the law. So I get pulled over, I get put on the curb, I get put in handcuffs, and they searching my bicycle. But we heard that, there's people doing things on bicycles and stuff around here.
Sure.
Mine
No,
was
and that's what we're
8:30
trying to get
a.m. in the
at,
morning, headed to college.
is, what your
But
personal
this
experience
would be
is,
the
and
scenario
that
that plays
bias,
out
either the bias
for
that you
me
get
most
or you feel
commonly
from the
when I have
police,
an
or bias
altercation
that you
with
have
the
towards the
police
police.
for whatever reason.
Does that make sense?
Does that answer your question, John? Yes. Like my bias that I have towards the police would be, I just don't want to be around, because if something escalates or if there's a mistake, like, there's no reason, and I might not get a date in court. And my reasoning and logic behind it is, to be wise and to be right is two different things. I may have the right to do something, but that right may get me hurt. It may get me jailed. It may get me in prison. It may get me killed. So I may not have the ability to exercise my right at that moment.
Totally.
So we'll be wise
Chris
to me
Harris.
not to want to choose to exercise my rights, whereas most people do. They want to feel that freedom. But as a black man, you don't really feel that freedom to exercise your rights. So you reserve. Does that make sense?
Hey, John. So I guess all I can do is talk about my personal experience. And one of the things I always point out is that my life experiences are mine, of course, and they're different from what the narrative is that supposedly every black man has this experience. As you know, John, I'm a military brat. I was raised primarily overseas. My family's from Detroit. So one of the things I've experienced, my father was career law enforcement, 24 years in the military as a federal agent and 12 years as a sheriff. And so I learned, especially growing up overseas with the German police, one of the things we realized is that the German police have zero, they have complete leeway. There's no such thing as police brutality. So they did not ask you to do something. They told you to do something. And those of us who were over there knew you get you don't get a second chance. If they tell you to do something, you do what they tell you. It's interesting, a lot of my high school classmates, as we move back stateside, I've noticed that there's a more against police that we did not have when we were over there. And likewise, when I first got back stateside, I noticed that I started kind of feeling this kind of animosity against cops stateside that I didn't feel when I was in Germany. That being said, you fast forward 27 years, I'm 47 years old. I've been pulled over by the police. In fact, my wife and I were driving from Virginia to Louisville, Kentucky, and it was literally 2 o'clock in the morning. We were on about 10 miles from the West Virginia border. And yes, I was grossly exceeding the speed limit. I came around the corner. The cop had me dead to rights as a Virginia Highway Patrol officer. Once again, 2 a.m., my wife is knocked out in the seat next to me. I have my headphones on because I'm kind of enjoying the drive. Long story short, I come around the corner. He sees me. I'm like, crap, I know he's got me. So what do? I start slowing down my vehicle. I pull over to the side, and he comes after me. By the time he's pulled over, my vehicle's already turned off. I've turned on the interior dome light. I've already grabbed my license and then registration, everything like that. I roll down the driver's window, side window. I put my left hand on the door sill. I put my right hand on the steering wheel, and in my right hand, I have my driver's license and insurance, and I also have my concealed carry permit because yes, I was carrying a gun. And so as I am so when the officer walked up, I was like, hey, how you doing, officer? You got me, right? And I handed him my license, and he looked, he said, okay. When he saw my concealed carry permit, he says, is the weapon in the car with you, Mr. Harris? I said, yes, sir, it's on my hip. He said, okay, well, just keep your hands where I can see them. I said, no problem, officer. He goes to the back, does his thing. Now, I was doing close to 90 miles an hour when he stopped me, which is way above record driving. He goes to the back, does his thing, comes back. He gave me a ticket. He wrote the indicated speed was 80 miles per hour, which meant instead of him possibly arresting me or me at least having to go to court out in the middle of nowhere, he says, slow down, Mr. Harris. And that was the end of the interaction. And one of the lessons I try to explain to people, by and large, you go a long way towards determining whether you have an interaction with a police officer or whether you have an altercation with a police officer. Attitude is everything. And I've done ride-alongs. I would suggest if you've had negative experiences, go down to the police department and ask to do a ride-along, because things look entirely different when you're riding along with police officers. I live in Colorado Springs, which is not exactly a hotbed of crime, but yet there is a criminal element there. And when I did a ride-along, I saw things from a cop's perspective. We dealt with black people, white people, Hispanic people, and I saw what a cop sees. And you need to know that cops want to go home at night. And most of them, like in that case, are there jerks out there who are cops? Without a doubt. I mean, they're human beings. You got 800,000 law enforcement people, jerks. I mean, the law of large numbers says that. But I think that a lot of it has to also do with the way we've been conditioned to have interactions with police officers, as opposed to being taught to be, to have agitations, to agitate a police officer. And that's one of those things, you don't win. You do have rights, but you don't win by fighting a cop. I mean, that's just a no-win situation for you. A best case scenario, you end up getting arrested. Worst case scenario, you end up dead. So the thing to do, of course, what I've been told and what I've experienced is if you have an interaction that's a negative interaction,
if you want
you
to
take it to
echo
court.
talk a little
Or
bit
you
about
file
your
a
personal
complete police
experience and how
complaint,
you see
but
your
it's
personal
never
bias.
in your best interest, regardless of ethnicity, to get into an altercation with a police officer on the spot. And that's just been my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm happy to talk about my personal bias, but I actually would like for everyone just to think for a minute. I think that this actually weighs heavily on me. These are the types of conversations we're having across the country, and we're having with young people, we're having with adults. And if all of us would step back for a moment, one of the things I think would be interesting is for us to think about what has become the normative behavior that we have all accepted. And so I think everything that everyone has said here has been 100% their truth. I am the mother of a 21-year-old African-American male, tall, muscular, and deaf. And I have had these similar conversations with him. And of course, I mean, the sad thing is I'm going to say, of course, he has had run-ins with law enforcement. And that and the things that we're talking about are our normative experience as Americans. And while I think it's great we have this conversation, I think it's worth it for us to say, should this be our normative experience as Americans? Everyone is absolutely right. I think in many instances, there's a way to make sure this is an interaction and not an altercation. But should this be the norm? Should this be our expectation? I obviously, I think it's coming from my comments that I don't think this should be the norm. I don't think this should be the expectation. I also think these are, Christopher, I love your example, but the truth is you were interacting with a law enforcement officer who was coming at you for a justifiable reason, as opposed to, while the officer in the interactive activity may or may not have had it was justifiable, but it really wasn't. And so, yes, I think if an officer is approaching us because we are doing something wrong, we are violating our covenant with society, I think we should feel differently about that than an officer that is approaching us because they or someone else was impacted by our race. And so, I would just say my experience as a young Black person growing up in Brooklyn, in parts of Brooklyn that were not well off, a Black woman who is a mother of a young Black male who's already had these interactions, I think it is good for us to talk about biases. I lead people and we train people in this all the time, but I also think it's really important for us to say some normative behavior is not right and it's not American and we ought to require a higher standard.
Well, if I can respond to what Diana's saying, I'm not justifying any sort of bias. I'm saying is that there's two people involved in this interaction, and usually it becomes an altercation when both people decide to make it so. Like I said, I mean, you can, from a biblical standpoint, right? A kind word turns away wrath. And so, I mean, unless somebody is bound and determined to be an absolute jerk, which, the law of large numbers once again says it's possible that you could run across that police officer who is a jerk or that police officer is having a bad day. Yes, it's possible that person is bound and determined to have it turn into an altercation. In many cases, you can de-escalate things. And that's the only thing I sit there and say is that, ask yourself, if this person usually has the upper hand because they are the police officer and that you resisting or so on and so forth can lead to them saying, hey, this person was resisting arrest or disorderly conduct or something like that, I believe in not giving them ammunition. And by the way, I also have, when I was younger, I had an interaction where I fit the description of somebody that they thought was doing something wrong. And long story short, out of nowhere, 20 police cars came out of nowhere, and next thing I know, I'm jacked up on the hood of a police car, and it's because they were surveilling an area. They thought I was someone who had been committing crimes in that area. Now, they let me go. I was never arrested or whatever like that. I was never even detained, but of course, I was detained at that moment, but they ascertained that I was not the person that they were looking for, and really the only description I could have conceivably fit at that point was Black male. I was not very happy with that interaction. In fact, I was humiliated by that interaction. But one of the things that we did is that we actually took it up with the police department. And guess what? I got an apology from the police department, but I did not try to fight against the police at that point because that would have made things worse.
Christopher, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with your approach. Your approach is what I teach my son, my children, my cousins, my nephews. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. But what I'm saying is that while that approach is effective, it is actually to some degree unethical that we have to do it and we feel we have to do it. I think another approach would be, I actually also have family and friends in law enforcement. And I think another approach would be to say, you are the leaders, you are the people holding all the power. And so you are held to a higher standard of interaction, and that is going to govern what happens in our societies. So I'm not negating what you're saying. In fact, I say it. But I think that we say it and that we have to say it is problematic.
Hi, this is Doretta. I just want to add a comment. I hear Diane, and you're right. No, it shouldn't be the norm. I've been a police officer for 26 years. I'm in LA. I grew up in South LA, and I wanted to work in the communities that look like me so I could make a difference. And that was my whole reason for becoming a police officer, because I was a victim of crime. The gentleman who spoke before Christopher, where he indicated that they asked, the first thing a police officer asks is, are you on parole or probation? That is totally wrong. That is not something that a police officer should automatically ask because you're either black or brown. So what I tried to do, and we hire from, we're not perfect, but our job is to weed out the ones that tarnish the badge and that erode public trust. That is our job as police officers, not just to take criminals to jail, but this profession has to be with honesty, with integrity, with dedication. And sometimes we don't see that. And we as law enforcement, we can't pretend that things like that do not happen, because it definitely does. Now, when I'm doing traffic stops though, my first impression is I'm not going to come out hard. I need to figure out what's going on. I need to also keep my guard up, but I also need to be respectful, because this could be the first time that this individual has a contact with a police officer. So whether good or bad, that's going to leave an impression on this individual that I'm stopping. So that's why I try to make every interaction positive. However, sometimes they don't want it to be positive. So what these eyes have seen out there on these streets in 26 years, you would not want to be in my shoes for 26 years. There are people out there, and you know this, there are people out there that prey on innocent people, children. So sometimes, like, for example, the female, and I won't take a lot of time, just real quick. For example, the female, the scenario, I get radio calls. We'll get a radio call, says, okay, we have a male Hispanic, 2 male Hispanics in a blue car. They just robbed a bank in this area. We're driving around. We see a male Hispanic with that description. Our job to society is to investigate. But as soon as we find out that these individuals were not involved in this crime, then we let them go. And what I do, I'll take them to my police car and I'll say, look, here's the screen, here's a dispatch call. This is what was said, because I don't want them to leave the situation hating
we
the
look forward to
police
having you on in the
or
future,
saying, oh,
Chris.
she
Thank
just
you.
put me over because this, that, and the other. Now, everyone doesn't do that.
I want to bring in our other panelist, Diego Rubio, is a
and by the way, I do have to go, John, and everybody, thank you very much for allowing me this forum, and good luck to everyone, and thanks for the conversation.
Diego is my dear friend. Diego is currently the chair of the Veterans of Wall Street. He also holds positions on different nonprofits of equal status, and he was attached to Special Forces when he was in the Army during his career. He works for Ernst Young.
And in terms of our community and how bias and prejudice and how the business community can help improve itself.
Thank you, Boyd. I appreciate that, and thank you for having me again. I guess just to confirm, what you guys wanted me to cover is about the business side. Is that correct? Absolutely. So I'm speaking personally what I've seen across, as things have happened, and I'm not only speaking from a racial perspective, but I'm also talking about from another minority perspective, including the veterans and the LGBTQ community and other communities that may be impacted. But it is important to understand that, believe it or not, or you want it or not, that the business do carry a lot of weight on the different community. I will say that business, in my opinion, should be held accountable to what they do in their communities because A, they benefit from the community, B, they actually profit from the community, and C, there's a symbiotic relationship with the community. And what I mean by symbiotic relationship, I mean, I'll give you an example. Company X, Fortune 500 company, moves to a rural area in the United States, opening a new office. In the area there's a lot of people of color, minorities, and stuff like that. It is a responsibility, in my opinion, or is in the responsibility, in the scope of responsibility for the firm to actually impact the community. It is not only writing a couple of checks here and there, and everybody goes in the press and the media and stuff like that. It is actually positively impacting the community, and what I mean by that is, let's actually go out there. Let's have conversations. Let's invite people from the community to the firm or to the company that's opening. Let's talk about what it is. Let's talk about how the company get engaged in social aspects. Let's talk about New York a little bit. I mean, how many Fortune 500s is in New York, for example? Hundreds. They actually sit in there and they have a lot of power. They have their own buildings. They have their own billboards. They have their own, they have their own coalitions, for lack of a better word. That's an example of, how coalitions happen. And one of the things that I think needs to happen in New York, and I've been advocating for it, is there has to be a coalition like there is on the veterans piece on the people of color community. There has to be a coalition where all the companies coming together, especially the big ones, the ones that have weight, not only in the financial sector, but in every other industry, to come together and literally have these conversations, have the leaders have these conversations. And I'm not talking about conversations that last 5 minutes and say, this is what we're doing, and everybody stands up and applauds. It's actually having a real impact. Talking to the lowest level people in your company to see how they feel. Like I said before, diversity and inclusiveness is a really dangerous game sometimes for companies, in my opinion. Because everybody says they have their, employment rights group, and everybody is very kumbaya, everybody's happy, and they put all this PR, and for example, in November, it's the veterans, in February, it's the blacks, in October, it's the Latinos. There's a lot of PR going around, but what I really don't see is a lot of inclusiveness. There's diversity, but there's no inclusiveness. And I believe inclusiveness is where really the companies are going to strive. They should strive to get to. The difference between diversity and inclusiveness, I've actually had a conversation with very senior folks on my clients, and actually one of them actually said, well, we have diversity and inclusiveness. And I asked her to actually tell me what the definition in her words was diversity and inclusiveness. She couldn't. I was listening to the podcast, and I told her what I had her in the podcast. Is diversity is when you get invited to the dance. Inclusiveness is when you get invited to dance. And I believe until the companies are actually inclusive of everything, of the diversity that they have, they're not going to be able to impact that community. The community can be absolutely impacted by these companies. They have a lot of power, like we call it here in the military. They have a lot of pull, right? You have Fortune 500 company CEOs that have millions of dollars, companies that have funds that can support these organizations and other movements that can actually do good for our community. But until then, there's going to be three sides. There's going to be like we're talking here, there's the anti-police, or the different views on the police, the pro-police, and I feel that the companies right now are in the middle, trying to figure out exactly where they're going to fit. And I don't think that is really going to work down the road, because companies, I understand in my opinion, they have to.
That was excellent.
They have to choose
Thank
a side,
you,
and not
Diego.
a
I
side
love
like
that
they're anti-police or
inclusivity,
pro-police, but they have to
diversity
choose a
versus
side in terms
inclusiveness
to impact the community.
discussion.
We need to get
I know
engaged with the
that
community,
we're
so we
hoping to
understand the
have
challenges and able to
more on
impact them.
that next week.
So that's pretty much
We're trying to get
around
the
and dirty,
Business
pending your questions.
Roundtable to join us as well and talk about how education and economic opportunity really makes a difference in the attitude of the community and how it can improve itself. So does anybody, if anybody has any questions for Diego or wants to comment on that he just talked about, please put it in the chat. Just talk a little bit, Diego, about education and what you're, from a business perspective, how there's a bias when it comes to unequal education.
So I think you and I were talking about it, John, a couple weeks ago. But I was in a conference where there was a couple of CEOs from Fortune 500 companies where they actually talked about. I think this was like a year ago, right before COVID. Like I think maybe a couple months before COVID hit, but it was in Washington D.C. And one of the things that they said was that it was interesting when they said that there are more open positions right now in the industry, and I'm not talking only the financial sector. I'm talking about most of the technology, financials, as well as other industries. There's more open positions than actual qualified applicants. The key word there is qualified applicants. There's definitely a waterfall of applicants, but not of them are qualified. And I think there was a great conversation going on about the whys. And one of the key facts was about the education that the applicants receive and where they're coming from. There's a lot of state schools. There's a lot of schools that are not considered like the private top schools. I'm talking about not the private schools or the Ivy League schools or pre-Ivy League schools. I'm talking about like colleges anywhere from the community colleges all the way to state colleges across the nation. I feel that companies can actually impact these schools because these schools depend on these companies for many reasons. One, their alumni are in those schools, so that in those companies, so they can boast that and attract more audiences. These companies also have a fund for a lot of schools. I know there's a lot of recruiting investments that they do across the different schools. I mean, I've seen multiple companies. I mean, look at and this is public information, but look at the big banks. They donate a lot of money to different schools for their investments. EY has donated $4 million in grants this year. So those are just primary examples. But the question really comes to, John, what you were asking is, how can businesses or how can the big companies, actually every business can, and even the community can impact the school in the region? It's pretty simple. They need to talk to schools. A lot of schools simply have a program that, let's take a couple majors, everybody's happy, here's your major classes, and you graduate. When you throw them out in the graduation piece, you have nothing else in there other than your degree. Sometimes with no experience. And again, it's because it's great. I personally think the schools have not done a great job at actually creating a curriculum that will be impacting minorities, that will be impacting people of color. When you look at the top schools, you're going to see classes. For example, Columbia University, right, has a fintech classes. They have microtechnology classes. They have cryptocurrency classes. When you compare it to a community college or a state school, they don't have these applications. They don't have these classes. Yes, there's a lot of funding issues, but nobody's really doing anything about it. And that's where I think the businesses and actually start pretty much muscling their way in. If the businesses want talent, they need to invest in that talent. And by investment, I mean go to the schools, invest money in those schools.
On Wall Street,
create
are there programs that,
especially for underrepresented minorities, where they can actually
in existence or should be in existence
get
that
the
can
talent
help,
that they
that
want?
companies
And that
can
way
get
we wouldn't have
behind
the issue
to
of
help
having more
improve
open
their
roles
community?
than non-qualified applicants. That's pretty much it. I don't think there is a program specifically. I'll be honest to you. I've heard across the noise that happens in the street that there is a some kind of push from multiple companies to create a coalition similar to the Veterans of Wall Street. Haven't heard much in it. Cannot confirm anything just because I
If anybody
haven't
has
really
questions
heard of
for Diego,
other than the
please
rumors.
type them in
But
the
currently,
chat
right now,
box.
there is no
We
program
have
that
some
Wall Street
students
has,
on the
to
call.
my knowledge, that's a coalition. Again, individual companies can actually have special programs, but I'm not aware of those specific programs.
I have a question for Diego when you're ready, John. Diego, question for you. So when you state right now that for some of the openings they have, the criteria for them are a lot more challenging than what the majority of those that live in lower socioeconomic environments and go to community college are able to meet. It's kind of similar to how with the military, when we're transitioning out, they'll alter the standard if you just got out in the last 6 months for a job application, for when you're applying for a certain position. But I don't see them wanting to do that when it comes to certain jobs for people just based off purely of race to change what the criteria would be. So I wanted to know what you thought about that, and it would piggyback off of the idea if you get to race, you understand that not everyone has access to the same education to begin with. So it's almost impossible for certain groups to meet the criteria to even apply for certain jobs. So I wanted to know what you thought about that, please.
So I think that's a really good question, Boyd. I think that it is part of kind of covering what I said before. It all depends on really, it's a question that it's a real loaded question. I think it's a really open-ended question, unfortunately. And I don't know if I have the direct answer. What I can tell you is that there is definitely, in the application process, there is definitely challenges. And if you think about it, and I'm going to go to the application process the way I understand it, from a business perspective, there you look at somebody's resume and you just by in paper or by application, you don't determine whether or not there is any kind of minority in this person at this time. But part of the challenges is that again, it goes back to my point that the lack of proper programs in school, not only transition, and Boyd, you and I have talked about the transition to the military. They do a horrible job at it, right? And I feel it's the same case here where the businesses, as well as the schools, do a horrible job bridging that gap. Because there's no real programs to talk to students about the future opportunities until they get to senior year. But when they get to senior year, most of these guys have already their major aligned. And what are they going to do? Take another 2 years to get to a new major when things? Again, it goes back to my thing where the schools need to be more proactive and business need to muscle their way in. And the application, again, it's to 6 months and stuff like that. The problem is, how are you going to know where to apply if the school doesn't have a really good program to help you apply?
Absolutely.
It's the same in the military, right? So does that kind of answer your question, Boyd?
Yeah. It did. I didn't think there was an actual answer yet to it. So I'm happy that we got to discuss it. It reminds me of commercials where you see someone of color going for a job interview and the person the resume says you don't meet the criteria. The person then says, well, let me tell you about the life I've lived so far and how I've been able to do this by doing that and that, and so speak deeper to the person. And I think that's where the transition has to go to now, where you
Okay, we're going to get to some of the questions that have been posted in the chat,
and the person
and
overall, meaning
there's been
perhaps
some really,
that you
really
can't
great
get by just going to
comments.
school. But still allow you to
One of the ones I
in
want
that
to
job.
reach
And
out
I
to
think
is
that's
a
where the shift
question
needs
that
to
was
be.
posted
And
about
thank you for speaking to
how
Diego.
if you're the innocent person or supposedly innocent person, not the speeder that Chris Harris was going 90 miles an hour, trying to pretend he was a NASCAR driver. But let's say you're just the guy sitting on the side of the road and a police officer gets a 911 call, and the bias that could exist between the innocent bystander and the police officer who's responding to a 911 call, and how, as the innocent bystander, you don't really know whether the police officer is harassing you or whether they're responding to a 911 call, and how do you react to that? So I'm going to give this to Overton, because these are the kind of scenarios that you and I love talking about on Sundays. So how do we, as citizens, because this kind of gets to Diane's point about what should be normal behavior, how do we, as community people, show respect to the officer, not knowing whether or not 911 has been called or not? Does that make sense? Am I asking the question right? It, it,
Well, I don't know if I completely understand what you're asking me. Like for instance, the scenario. If I was pulled up on the side of the road, most of the time it would be like the highway patrol that would pull up on me. And I've never really had a bad altercation or have any kind of bias towards the highway patrol. Maybe in my whole life I might have had one that just really like was having a bad day, but I haven't really had much with them in California. So if an officer approaches me, and he's talking to me, I'm gonna say, hey, did I do something wrong? Am I breaking the law? And then if he asks me for my ID or something, I'm going to give him my ID. At that point, it's really going to depend on the officer, because if the officer is looking to detain, to escalate a situation, then his questions and the way he does things is going to push that situation. But I would never push that situation. First off, the officer approached me.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere on the side
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
just
road
trying to,
by myself.
it's, I
There's
tried
no
to post the
witnesses,
scenario in
and
the
nobody's
chat
going to believe me.
about how
So
if
I have to
you're
think within those
supposedly
parameters
the
when I'm dealing
suspect or
with a situation with an
you're
officer.
innocent,
If I'm somewhere off
like I
by
said, you're not
myself and he
Chris, you're not
pulls
the
me over
speeder,
or they just approach me.
but the police is
Does that
responding
make
to a
sense, John?
911 call. You as the bystander, innocent bystander, you don't know whether the police is responding to a 911 call or the police is harassing you. And so what I'm trying to get at is, as an officer approaches you, how do you show, what should be the bias or your own personal bias, like, hey, that officer's just harassing me, versus, hey, that officer's responding to a call. And how should we as community people just interact with the police in general, because we don't know what we don't know. I don't know if I'm just confusing you or making sense.
I think this was my question, so I'm kind of clarifying what I meant. So this question had to do with the scenario that we played out with the decision making. And if you guys remember, in the call that the officer received, they described a situation as having, I think, 2 suspicious men. And that word suspicious, like suspicious activity, already frames the officer to think something might be going on here, and I need to investigate, just like Doretta. So I think
No, I mean
the point that I was
that's a
trying to
bias
make is
all by
a lot of
itself, or a
times
prejudice,
we need to encourage
depending
people who
on
are calling
your
911 to think,
what your
is this really a
intent
suspicious
is.
situation, or
But
am
I
I
think
setting up
people,
someone
like in
to
the
have
supermarket
a bad
claim,
interaction?
the insinuation
That's
of
the
the
point I was trying to
scenario, and
make.
David can correct me if I'm wrong, but the scenario was based on, hey, did some white lady see some black guys driving in the parking lot looking suspicious, so I'm calling 911, versus mind my own business and just go do my grocery shopping, right? That's what you're getting at? Yeah. Well, no, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one for Overton based off what he was saying before, please. Overton, question for you. How, when you get, from your experiences with law enforcement and from your understanding of what you would imagine goes through many dark-complected human beings in America's experience with law enforcement, they get pulled over, when they've been pulled over, how does that impact you when you know what may happen if you have to go in front of the legal system and there may be some biases there, meaning go to court and have to have someone assigned to you? How does that awareness affect the way you are in the now state when law enforcement does come to you? And how do you think it also affects those who may react a way that you don't imagine them to react, but you know that they know what could happen if they got locked up, and it may be a system that they don't feel is going to represent them fairly?
Absolutely, boy. I guess it's kind of like two parts to that. One is like, now I'm a 41-year-old mature man. So I think, you know, I'm a single dad. I want to be around for my children. I want to be free. So I'm thinking the moment it happens, anything is happening, I'm thinking about survival and getting back to my kids. Now let's rewind 20 years ago, you know, growing up in East Oakland and in a really violent area, and you already have a bias because you've been harassed. You're getting harassed all the time by the police, so you're never going to be like a lot of tension. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that, well, if I have to have an interaction with an officer, I do not want to go to court. I do not want to, because I'm going to be perceived as his word is going to be over mine, and I'm not going to be fairly heard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not going to consider the evidence or consider things that I would bring forth, because in the court, instead of that officer being a human being like the man they're standing next to as a human being, they're kind of like elevated as to say, well, they don't lie, they don't cheat, they don't steal, they don't make mistakes, there wasn't a misperception. I mean, it could just be a miscommunication, you know, and if the two sides could just stop and open everything up and say, okay, well, here's maybe where something went wrong and it could be resolved. But it's not like that in the court of law. So, you know, as a black man, you're thinking, if I go to court, I may go to jail, or the DA is going to offer me a deal that I have to take so I can be free in 6 months, and say that I'm guilty for something I didn't do, or look at an extremely long sentence because I didn't accept whatever they tried to offer me.
And how do you think that affects black man who's being questioned by a cop who may have not, who knows he didn't do anything, but has the fear that if this person wants me to get locked up, I'm going to lose that battle, and then the power is no longer in my hands. Once I'm in, I belong to the system. So how do you think that may affect how they choose, the choices they choose to make in that immediate stage with that officer, even though they know they didn't do anything?
Boy, my perception in life is that to be wise and to be right are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I may have the right of way to walk across the street on a green light, but it's wise for me to look both ways. If there's a car coming and it looks like it may not stop, even though that car is supposed to stop by law, if something's wrong or something's wrong with that driver, they may go through. So it's wise for me to yield versus for me to take my right and end up killed, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does.
Right. So every situation, it's about being wise. You know, if you're a man and you're married, it's wrong for you to go out and hang out with the fellas to do something, but it's not wise because it may cause contentions and problems and other things in your home. So it's not that you broke the law. It just wasn't a wise thing to do. So for me, I just think that be wise in all your decision making and hope for the best. That's how I see it now.
You know, it was interesting. When I was deployed, I had an Iraqi cell phone when I was in Iraq, and it had a different ringer. An only ringer I've ever heard it was when I was deployed. And when I was home in the States, somebody had that as their ringtone. I had never heard it before, and I freaked for a moment because I did not want to be in Iraq, and I heard it. Now, that's a traumatic event that had happened from sustained trauma of hearing that ringer in a place I didn't want to be and I wasn't home. So I often wonder, if you're harassed a certain amount of times when you know you haven't done anything, especially that can serve as a trigger if you even see lights go on behind you, where you may act out of sorts, and it's hard for you to be wise because your PTSD to that event just got triggered up. And I believe what happens more frequently than not, and I want to know what you thought about that.
I totally agree. There's been situations where I haven't always been able to just keep my total cool. I felt the situation kind of escalating, but at some point you just get tired of just being a rug, you know. I was on my way to work. I went to Safeway and Trader Joe's to pick up something for my kids before I went to work. I was driving a commercial truck, and I worked the night shift. So I leave the parking lot. I'm driving to the stop sign. There's a sheriff. He's going the opposite way. I make a complete stop, look both ways, and go. Next thing you know, I start to accelerate. I'm moving slow. He makes a U-turn, and he speeds behind me like I'm a bank robber, like I did something, and pulls me over. And, you know, so he pulls me over, and I'm thinking to myself, really? This guy just driving down the street, looking at me. You didn't see me anywhere. Nobody's made a complaint of my driving my favorite little 90 little pickup truck. I know there was no complaint and nothing suspicious. I'm in work clothes. I'm in a work vest. You can see I'm going to work. I'm in work uniform. So now I'm a little frustrated. So he comes up and he says, hey, the reason I pulled you over is because you didn't have a light on your license plate. So I'm thinking to myself, you just ran me down. You're going to make me late for work. You're going to cause a situation, and you're going to run me down for no light on my license plate. So I'm so frustrated. And I get to the point where I just stop talking. I don't even answer questions. I just give you the information. But if I keep being pressed to talk, then I do get upset because now I feel like you're pressing a situation that you didn't have to press. And those occurrences happening over and over in life, it makes you feel like the police are not there to help you and they're not there to serve you. And even if you go make a complaint to the police department, there's going to be retaliatory measures. It's always been that. It's been that way since the civil rights.
No, I mean that's I love that
in
wise.
some
I
ways,
mean
yeah,
we've
you
had a
have the
lot of really
right
great
to make that
analogies
complaint, but it's not wise to.
on this
If that makes
call, which is great
It sure
because
does. Thank you,
I
Overton.
think it
That
helps
was
us.
wonderful.
You know, we've had a few
Thanks, Boyd.
sidebar
You got
conversations
it.
on the side about how bias plays into people who call 911, how people perceive the police perceive, like we did in the scenarios with Dave, and then how is like to Overton's point, the community and our ability to deal with bias. So I want to try to see if we can get some of the we have a bunch of young kids that are first time participants. So I'm going to throw it to Justin. If you could talk about your experience. I mean, you're in the Van Nuys area, not exactly the greatest neighborhood, but talk a little bit about bias and what you've learned on this chat today.
So, as experience with like police officers, I haven't really ever had a a running experience with a police officer before. But from what I've just seen, like over like the years, just there is sometimes just some bias upon like when our police officers stop like people of minorities. So like, but I think that from this conversation, I think there needs to be like some solutions just to try to like limit just the way that those encounters happen. Just try to find like solutions just to fix the problems.
Well, no, that's good. I mean, you're
And
17,
in
is
Van
that correct?
Nuys, um,
Nice.
I haven't, like I said, I haven't really
We're glad
faced
to
an
have you.
issue before, so I can't really speak from
Glad to have you on the call today.
previous experience.
You have a question, Boyd?
Yep.
Okay. So what's the worst thing, Overton, that you would say? What's the worst encounter that you've ever had
Glad to be
with
here, as I've been saying.
police officer that escalated into an altercation?
No, I don't.
I want to try to get into. We started talking a little bit on the side chat here about PTSD, and I was going to bring in Javier for this, but he had to go. Talk a little bit about how the trauma you have from service. How does that affect either your bias towards police, or how does it affect how you interact, or how it can become an altercation? No, you're going first.
Okay, is Boyd going first? All right, I'll go first. Well, let me give you an example. This is one where I really lost my cool. So this is a good example. So I was hanging out with a friend. I was in Emeryville, and there was a marina, so we were hanging out, at the time to hang out. I guess the curfew, it was a curfew there, and I had never hung out at that marina, so I didn't know it was a curfew. So me and my friend were hanging out at the marina, and the cops, you know, pull in, right? So they race in like 2 cars, and then they like kind of catty corner both ends of my vehicle, and they're like, "Hey, you know, what are you doing out here?" I'm like, "I'm just hanging out with my friend." They're like, "Well, you know, there's a curfew, and it's closed at like 10 o'clock." And I was like, "Well, I wasn't aware. You know, I've only been here a couple of times. I didn't know it was a curfew." And they were like, "Do you have any ID on you or driver's license?" So I give him my driver's license, and he's like, "Is this your vehicle right here?" He said, "Do you have any what do you say? Are you on parole or probation?" I'm like, "No, sir." He's like, "Do you have any drugs or weapons on you?" I'm like, "No, sir." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You mind if I search your vehicle?" I said, "Yeah, I mind if you search my vehicle." He said, "Why? You got something on you?" I said, "I don't want you to search my vehicle. I don't give you permission to search my vehicle. I don't want my rights violated. I didn't do nothing." He says, "Well, it seems like you're hiding something to me." So then, like 5 more police cars pull up. Now they pull me aside, and they're like walking around the vehicle with flashlights, trying to see what, like if they could see something, just like sitting out that they could find to mess with me for. And I said, "Well, man, I don't have any drugs, weapons on me. I'm not doing nothing. I'm just here at the park. I've already been here. I didn't know it was a curfew." I said, "Why are you guys making such a big deal out of this?" He's like, "Who you getting smart with?" I said, "So why you getting smart?" I said, "Now you want to change your demeanor because all your friends turned up. You wasn't acting like that just a few minutes ago." And then the altercation, it got bad, and I was ready to fight all of the officers, you know, and I guess one of them had reason, was like, hold on. Let's just let this go. You know, they did search my vehicle as much as they could, but they didn't find anything, of course, because there was nothing for them to find, and they let me go. But the whole altercation, I don't think should have never even went there. It should have never went to that point. If I didn't know that there was a curfew there and you see my information, I'm not doing nothing wrong, and we're just hanging out, you can say, "Well, there's a curfew, you guys got to leave, just, you know, in the future, make sure." That wasn't what happened. Now you're calling more car things, and now you're accusing me of crimes that I didn't commit and
How did
searching
it
for
end up?
something to detain me for. And that would be like a situation where it escalates, and then your bias and your frustration and all that stuff kicks in, and now it's like, well, whatever. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, so we might as well just take it there. Just I lost a lot of my time. You
No,
know, I
that's
was
good.
angry, but I was able to go free. But
No, I appreciate you
you
sharing
know,
that story. Like I
you
said,
never
I,
know.
I wanted to
When
get
you're in a place
Javier in
like
here, but
that and all these
unfortunately he
cars
had to
around
go.
you, and you're by yourself, whatever they say happen is what happens.
Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Mike
So
Haynes, you want to chime in here?
I guess that's a shooting example. Yeah.
If he's still with us, or did he have to go? I think he had to go. Sure.
Hey, John, can I ask one thing? The program, there's a bunch of different scenarios on that program, but I don't know if it would be helpful for folks on the call if they want access to that for like a week or so forth, just to for the whole thing, and
I'm going to circle back with
take a
Doretta,
look.
but
I
I
can
don't know if
send
you
you a
saw in the
link and you can
comments,
pass it
but
around to
she
people
made
if
a comment
they're
about how
interested in
LAPD
taking
needs
a look
to
at the whole
use that.
David,
for
I'm fairly
better,
certain we use your technology in my Army
training.
Reserve unit.
You probably do. Yeah. Yeah, I did see that, so thanks.
And you know, David, what I saw with that video, even if that scenario doesn't mirror exactly what may be in real life, the benefit I saw there is what benefit comes by staying calm and breathing.
Yeah.
Now, I still understand there's that traumatic effect in your brain of having knowing what happens if you happen to get arrested, even if you're innocent and you're of color and you get locked up, the system's going to have you, and you could be scared enough of that even though you know you're innocent, you don't cooperate because your trauma's flared up. Separate to that, though, I see such great value in that program because the key takeaway is calm.
Yep.
So you can survive. And if you go in live, you have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And and another part is you mentioned about all different scenarios are different wherever you are. But one of the most important things is it starts that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great way to start the conversation. And a lot of the conversation that's been going back and forth here from one side or another side, it starts that conversation. And that's when the real learning comes.
John, John and David, I always refer back to this because it applies so much at the Steve Harvey Youth Mentorship Camp when they had the vignettes and they brought in law enforcement, county sheriffs of color from Georgia, the Macon area where we were, and they were posing scenarios, but walking them through it, kind of like saying, all right, I'm going to do this. What would you do now? And then hearing it from law enforcement of color, so they couldn't say that you're just saying this or treating me this way because of my color when you're the same as me. But it really was amazing because then the officers would say, but if you're going to do this, do you understand why this would make me think this? Not because of your color,
how it played
because
out,
of this. And then hearing it, the boys hearing it from these adults that look like them, just older, it carried such weight. And that's exactly what I think the benefit comes out of this. So
the thing that I want to try to give to everybody as a takeaway is understand what your own internal biases are and how that affects the decisions you make when you're out in the community. And in the chat thing, we've talked about people who call 911 unnecessarily, or how you're approached by police officers, when you didn't do anything wrong versus when you do stuff wrong. Because I think Chris brought up some good points on that and how that interaction, works. And then, like you were saying, Boyd, about being calm, and calm always is a good plan, no matter what.
And then when you talk about better preparedness for our ABCs, being better prepared, the more prepared you are, the easier it is to stay calm. When I used to fight and I was going to the ring and I'm worrying about how hard this dude hits, it may be because I'm worried about my chin is not as prepared as it could be or should be. So if you have officers more prepared through training and their physical fitness, it allows them to stay calm longer and allows them to, I think, beat their biases because they'll have the confidence they can handle what's being presented to them. It's when you aren't confident you can handle what's coming, then false evidence.
There's no question. I
real.
mean, obviously, as an organization,
fear takes
our whole
so,
program is
I think
the
that's a big thing, and
foundation
John,
of it
that's
is
a huge
diet,
part.
nutrition, and
Having
exercise.
a
And I
physical
think,
fitness standard,
when you look at the requirements that firefighters
law enforcement should have to take
to stay on the job, they have to pass an annual fitness test. In the military, you have to pass the Army fitness test. Otherwise you get discharged. And I think police officers, some have it, but it's not a national standard, and there has to be a national standard. Because when you look at the incident in Atlanta, or you're looking in some of these complicated situations that we hopefully can get into in the future. There was one that happened, Daryl and I were talking about the other day about a female officer who shot and killed a suspect because she was being attacked with a box cutter, and how you react to those situations, and how if you use better preparation, maybe everybody goes home. Because if truly the goal is at the end of the day everyone goes home, then that's how we should act as a community, and that's how we should act as police officers enforcing the community. And if those things happen in that level of respect, hey, at the end of the day, everybody should go home. There's going to be cases, well, there's two things. One, you can't fix stupid. So things are going to happen that you just can't predict, that things are going to go off the rails. But then things that you can predict or that you can better prepare for, like I believe the incident in Atlanta, if the police officers had followed our national standard, everybody would have gone home that night. So I'm not commenting on the justification of force or anything like that. I'm just saying from the jump, from better handcuffing techniques to some of the stuff that we talked about with Coach Lev and this better conditioning, the guy never gets the taser in the first place. I don't know, Lee, if you want to comment on anything.
A great session. I just want to present the question: how can we tap into the power source of hope? Again, everybody hopes to go home, for example, but there's so much more that we can use the power of hope to help change our perspectives, to destroy fear, that Boyd was talking about, to destroy worry and doubt. I think that's the commonplace. We want to find a common place, all of us, right? So that common place for all of us is hope. And it's the power of hope, of a real true hope. It gives us the ability to navigate from day to day, from situation to situation, whatever we face. We got a chance to, like I always say, move the chains, move forward, reach our goals, overcome the challenges that we face every day, no matter who we are. I really appreciate Brother Harris, what he was saying earlier about identity. And I think that when we really truly recognize the noun and the verb of who we are, then that's how we're going to live
No, I
every day.
think that
We're not going to be
what
caught
we're
up
trying
in
to
some
build
type of false
for our
identity,
November,
acting
looking forward to
outside
working
of our
with
true
Rise
self.
and the kind of
And this
program
is,
that we can
we
put
have a lot of
out
work to
and the
do to
reach.
answer that question. How
Because
can
I
we
think
tap into the power
it's
source?
all that. It's
How can we do that?
frequency.
All of us.
Someone once told me the key to success is frequency and reach. You got to have it often and reach a lot of people, and then you can move the needle. And so, we have a good task ahead of us. We got a lot of great things going on, and there's a lot of people on this call that are going to be involved in that event in November, and it'll become a template for what can be done in every part of the country. And before long, it'll just be a national standard that we have for both how police do their job and then how the community interacts with the police. And it's that mutual respect, because I say this every week on these calls: if there was mutual respect, George Floyd would be alive today. And it's a lack of respect for basic life that is what causes these types of incidents to happen. And it's time that we, as a veteran organization, as a veteran community, when there's a leadership void, someone has to fill the void. So I say we go in and as a group, we go out there and we improve our communities. Yeah, you have good comments, Gassio. By the way, introduce yourself, because I'm not familiar with you, and where are you, and how do you come to us?
Amen.
Yes.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Well, you ask
I'm
really
also
amazing
from Van Nuys.
questions,
I actually go to school
and
with
for a
Justin.
17-year-old,
So
that's very
I'm
impressive.
17. I'm still in high
I'm
school.
sure I can speak
And
for the
this was a
group. I
really
don't
interesting
like to speak for the
conversation. It's
group,
my
but I'll
first
speak
time
for the
here.
group on this one.
And I'm
You're
not sure how
always
this
welcome to
works, but I
come,
hope maybe we can
and
be invited again, because this was really amazing
bring
to be
more
part of.
friends. and it's every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Pacific time for us in the San Fernando Valley. And we change topics. I mean, it's the same theme, but it's different topics. We try to focus on different issues, but we'd love to have more of your students. And I know, Daryl, I don't know if you want to say anything, but good on you for inviting Gassia.
Thank you so much. So my question is this. It's kind of a two-part question, but I think that these biases that people have aren't developed overnight, and they're things that have been built on for a really long time. So my first question is, for if there are any officers here, is the training to eliminate those biases enough
So
in
I
the amount of
will
training that they
tackle
have?
part of your
And my
question.
question is, are there any kind
Because a
of
lot of the police officers
trainings
had
or
to go that
things
were on the
that
call. But
people
if
try
you
to do to pick
scroll,
out these biases,
I'm
aspiring
trying to find her
officers, and maybe
comment, but
target them
Jaretta,
individually?
who, for those of you who don't know, Jaretta, who was on the call earlier, she's the president of the LAPD Police Protective League, so it's the union. And so there's a lot of, and I think David probably can help answer this question as well. There's a lot of police departments that do bias training where they try to identify bias, but they're not scenario based. And I think that's really the key is how do you react to situations? And, this whole program started because of the way vets reacted to a situation and they didn't like what they saw. And so we decided to get involved in this project of improving our community. And so I think that every single person has some level of bias, and those bias come from your experience, your ignorance, your fear. So those are the main three, and they're usually taught or learned because of those three factors. And so the idea is to try to really look inside yourself and try to identify your own personal biases and how do you react and how you can work with friends. Like me, I have conversations with Overton and some other folks on a regular basis just to talk about things that we see in the news, like let's say the rioting in Portland or incidents that you see on the news, or we talk about the athletes kneeling, which is something we're going to tackle here in the near future in the next week or so, talking about how that is. We talked a little bit about winning hearts and minds. One of the key strategies in military victory is how do you win hearts and minds? And hopefully that's going to be our topic next week, is talking about communication and messaging. And we're working with Matt. He's the guy with the ceiling fan that everybody sees in the picture. I don't know, Matt, if you're there, if you can hear us. But we're going to hopefully talk about messaging and how you message. What's your goal? I always talk about goal. Is your end goal to achieve something, or is your end goal just to make chaos? And how hearts and minds can help you do that. Winning hearts and minds if you're actually trying to influence other people.
Yeah, thank you for your response. And I definitely agree with what you said about the bias and looking into yourself, because I think no matter what people tell you, if you don't decide to
as you
change
would
those
say,
biases on
you're
your
the
own,
captain of
nothing's
your
going
own
to
ship.
change. And so teaching people, I think a lot of things, or a lot of teachings that have started in high school are, be introspective, self-reflective, look at yourself and your actions. And I think that's definitely something important.
Yes, yeah, this is Dave. I'll just add in from law enforcement. There has been a big push for quite a few years now on training on implicit bias and unconscious bias and exactly what John's talking about. So they do have a lot of focus in that area. And I think one of the great things about this group is we're trying to expand that focus, not just in law enforcement but for everybody, to really start to understand those biases and how they make you make decisions throughout your whole entire life.
You know, from having competed at a high level as an amateur and as a professional, I remember my coach used to always say to me, the only thing you fear is what you know about yourselves. And you have the competition, and it's usually directly proportional. As your fear increases, your bias increases. And and this goes back into the preparation, those biases formed over a prolonged period of time throughout your life of being exposed to a certain thing to make you be afraid of something you know about yourself for being able to handle a certain situation. So that's, again, knowing what your own limitations are and are not. Through training, and training in a specific way, my coach used to always say, if somebody made a mistake in the ring, be patient. If you didn't catch it, just be patient. This is Coach Lev. They're going to do it again. That's how they're trained. So, and whenever you get scared, you fall back to your patterns. Your habits, what you're most comfortable with. So the reinforcement of new patterns has to take place over a prolonged period of time to erase or evaporate the concept that people already have towards others of what they are based off of their own fears or what they know about themselves. So that question about are they having programs in there, you can have a great program, but if you've lived 20 years of your life being molded into a certain something, you're not going to go through 1 year of a training program and it's gone.
Preparation,
you're going to
dedication,
have to practice
discipline,
same way
communication,
you do in sports.
all those things that you learn in sports are so important in life and really translate well to how you can be successful in life. And it's that way in the military too. And that's, one of the great intersections of this program is the military athletic intersection, which is another reason why we're excited working with RISE. They bring the athletic side and we bring the military side, and those two forces together create a lot of momentum. And then you have the faith community and you have the business community, and now you really have something that can generate momentum that can really win the hearts and minds. Anyone else? Because we're coming up on 2 hours. Time really flies when you're having fun. Hey, Matt Spikes, can you hear us, or are you? No, I just wanted you to introduce yourself to the group because we were all admiring your ceiling fan.
I'm here, John. I'm here. I heard it was a good program. How you doing? Sorry for if it's hard to hear me. I have a mask on right now, but my name is Matthew Spikes. I'm the policy director for the Business Roundtable, which is an organization that works on behalf of CEOs of Fortune 200 companies to advocate for several policy issues. And recently we developed a special committee on race and social justice and some of the issues that we're addressing.
No, I love having you, and you have a pretty industrial mask on. Where are you?
So,
are you you're not at home, are you?
Happy to join the call. John and I have had several conversations about how BRT could be helpful. So I'm looking forward to being helpful with the group and continuing these discussions. But thank you for having me.
I'm sorry, say that. Where are you? Oh.
He's on mute.
I'm sorry.
So anyone, let's put out a 911 in DC for AC repairman.
AC
we got to
right
get
so
Matt's buddy taken care of here.
In the DC area, and AC went out, so I'm trying to to be as helpful as I can.
No, we
and
appreciate you
send
being
them
on, and
burn up
hopefully we're going to make
in that
next
place.
week that business theme that we talked about. So I'll follow up with you guys. I want to thank everybody for joining us again.
But, thank
Really
you for
enjoyed
having
the
me. My pleasure
conversation.
joining you guys.
Thank you, Matthew.
Daryl, if you're still with us, thank you for inviting the kids. They really
Okay,
added a
absolutely.
great element. We need to get more kids on next week's call.
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. 100%. Yeah, Van Nuys is one of our better schools. James Monroe right up there as well. I don't know who else is on, but thank you, Van Nuys High School, for your excellent comments and your insight. And, we do courtesy patrols on campus. We work closely with the Los Angeles Unified School District Police Department. And we are very helpful, and we're great citizens, and we, live by the Army values. And I think we heard that firsthand and saw that firsthand today by listening to some of the comments and seeing some of the questions that were posted by these outstanding young intellectual cadets that we have in the program. We have 3,500 cadets in the second largest school district in the country, 700,000 students.
We're going to have a great event
they're
in
all role
November,
models.
that's for sure.
So thanks again.
Really appreciate
Their own
everybody that's
congressional
on.
district, they have
And
700,000.
Lee, as always,
second largest.
We're going to get on emotional
Second
intelligence.
New York City.
I mean, when you talk about the
Amazing.
power of
We
hope,
thank you. Thank
shameless
you.
plug. Everybody,
Appreciate
please
it.
tune in on August 30th on the Discovery Channel for our Life Aid, A Story of Hope TV show. It's going to be amazing stuff. It features some of the vets that are in this program, and hopefully you'll really get a lot out of it. Appreciate everybody's time and effort. And Boyd, if you had a final comment or anybody has a final comment, otherwise we'll sign off, and we'll all see you guys next Tuesday at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 Pacific, and going to be another great session. Thank you.